Right then, in the build-up show the other day, we were starting to talk. Gonzo was starting to talk about players that are undroppable, and he doesn't like it, and that Moyes needs to sort it out, really. And I was saying, hang on a minute, you need to change it. You can't look at it like that anymore. We were getting a little bit sidetracked. We were doing the build-up to an actual game of football, so we got back on track, and we sort of parked that topic, but it was something that we felt we could discuss a little bit and get your opinions below in the comments as well. But Gonzo, right, you feel there's certain players undroppable, and it's something, well, that you extremely dislike, should I say?
I do dislike it, and I dislike it for one reason that I perceive to be a reason, which I think is not motivational to other players. And I also dislike it because I think for a very, very solid reason. So I don't think anybody should be guaranteed their place, because sometimes people are crap and they're in bad form and we shouldn't be guaranteed it. And funny enough, it's obviously not me that does it, because when we recorded, not the snippet of the Harry Redknapp video that I put on the forum channel, but when I did the main interview with Harry Redknapp on Patreon, one of our patrons actually asked it, did you ever have an undroppable player? And they asked Harry that question directly. And it was weird, really, Geo, particularly when we got to the end of the season and there was all these rumours about Souček being off, and Souček wanted to leave and David Moyes didn't want to play him. And I thought, well, he would be one of the ones I would pick as one of Moyes' undroppables. And I think there's been times when he should be dropped. And the more I look at it, and I think even this season, Jarrod Bowen, okay, it looks like, particularly when he made the 3-4 substitutions at the end of the FCSB game, that Bowen was starting to get back to form. But I thought before that, there was no legitimate reason for playing Bowen ahead of Saïd Benrahma. And then it's not just him either. I look at Fabianski and I think, oh, okay, well, why is Fabianski can make these errors and he just retains the shirt? And I don't think it just stops there either, Gio.
Well, I think the problem is, though, I think you've got to change this season to last season, because last season and the season prior, I agree that time Souček felt undroppable. He did feel undroppable last season. But I think you've got to start with a clean slate now for Moyes. I don't think you can judge Moyes on the undroppable tag for certain players from last season. I would argue even this season up until now, because the transfer window didn't close until last week. So I think you're still bringing in, we still brought in Emerson, for example. So it'd be a bit like, say, well, Creswell's undroppable. Well, yeah, because we didn't have Emerson until right at the end of the window. And I think you've got to give Moyes a clean slate now, which is, right, we're judging you from here in as to whether you have any players that you are unwilling to bench because they're out of form. Because that's ultimately the problem, isn't it? He's not taking players that are out of form out. He's leaving them in. And I think sometimes, giving players 2 or 3 games to get their form back, try play them through their bad form, is not necessarily a bad policy. But that's it, 2 or 3 games, then it's a case of, now we're going to take you out and put somebody else in, kind of thing. But the reason I don't think you can judge him previously is because look at the Souček last season. What were the alternatives? Kral or Noble? Now, Noble, I think when he played pretty well, in all honesty. But I would argue, he only played well because he was used as a bit part player. He played 1 week and then he had 3 weeks off and then play again. And I think that is why he was able to play at such a high efficiency level, because he had that long sustained periods of rest in between games. If we started playing him on a Thursday and a Sunday and a Thursday and a Sunday, I think soon, very, very quickly, you would see Martin Noble's performances rapidly declining, and then you're in a problem. With Alex Kral, you've said this numerous times, everybody has. It's clear from quite early on, Moyes did not want him. He was a signing of opportunity. We only got him because we got him on deadline day on loan. We thought, oh, on loan? Yeah, we'll have him. Done a bit of scouting, didn't fancy him, chose not to pursue him. We were looking at him for around about 50 million or whatever. Moyes spoke about him as a UEFA correspondent, called that, ahead of the Euros. One to watch. Alex Kral was in there from David Moyes. So clearly we'd done our scouting on him and decided not to go get him. So we only got him on loan. So is Souček undroppable last season? I would argue there was nobody to come in and replace him last season. Moyes didn't have any alternatives that he trusted to play ahead of Souček. But that excuse cannot be used this time round, because you've brought in Flynn Downs. You've chose to keep Conor Coventry at the squad. And if you still feel, Moyes, that you have to play Souček because there's no alternatives, then you've got the window wrong, essentially. If you're able to spend 180 million and still not have an alternative to somebody in the starting 11, you've done something badly wrong. So I think, personally, you've got to judge him from here onwards. I don't think you can judge him previously. There is some games and some players you can point at and say, well, there's, Fabianski, for example, last season. I completely agree. There's times he should have been dropped. We had an adequate replacement in Areola. That is different. But the squad depth last season wasn't really there in terms of quality. It is now. And I think this is where you judge the undroppable tag for certain players.
And I will. And I mean, but what it does do is, I think what happened previously arouses suspicion. And I still feel in the mindset, we saw an exceptional performance. They probably weren't too. I don't know what everyone else's player ratings were. Okay, I can only go on your player ratings, my player ratings, and what people say in our chat, on these channels, on our Patreon that people write up, and in our WhatsApp group. That's my cross section of West Ham opinions, if you like. And I don't think there were too many who didn't think that Flynn Downs was the man of the match in the last European game. So that has to be some currency in that, in terms of getting into the team. Now, I want that to mean something, and I suspect, and this is something we said before, that it doesn't matter how well he plays, he won't get into the team.
Now, while myself and Gonzo discuss if David Moyes has got any undroppable players, I must confess, I've got one or two of my own in my Spitch team. I shall reveal my team on Friday in our Everton preview ahead of the Premier League, because it's a bit trickier this weekend. There's less games, but I quite like the challenge, actually, and I'm feeling quite confident I've got a strong team, one that's going to beat Gonzo this weekend. Now, if you're already one of the 276 people that's downloaded the app and joined the Hammers Chat League, thank you very much. Make sure you get your team in ahead of the weekend. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download the free app using the link in the description below. And now's a good time to get your team in. The free Classic to Play Premier League game for this weekend has £250 for the top spot. That's just for this weekend. It's not a season-long thing. It's the winner of this weekend gets £250. There's also prizes for runner-up and so on and so forth. But get it downloaded. Link is in the description below. And while you're there, make sure you join the Hammers Chat League. Click on Communities on the bottom tab. Search for Hammers Chat. You'll see our logo. You'll see myself and Gonzo in cartoon form wearing Scotland and England shirts. Make sure you join up and see if you can beat myself and Gonzo this weekend on Spitch. Anyway, let's get back to the discussion.
And when I say the team, I mean what I perceive, and I call it the first team. And I know it's, maybe people wouldn't look at it in these terms, but I consider it to be the Premier League team to be the first team, and the Europa, particularly in the group stages, would be a mishmash, a mix of them all. Get to the knockout stages of it, which I hope we will. Then again, you start seeing that Premier League first team is the team that's selected in Europe.
I call it cup final team.
Cup final, I like it. Yeah, cup final.
If you had a cup final at the weekend, who's playing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's important about it. And I don't want to go too heavy on Souček here, because it's not just him at all. And I do. But there has to be reason that you would put Flynn Downs in that, and he has to see a part to it. And it just worries me, particularly he's not playing well. Now, actually, he's not started the season too badly, Souček.
I was about to say he's in form at the minute, Souček. You talk about player ratings, he's posting 7 in 8 over the last 3 or 4 games now.
He is, but but I also think it's important. I'm going to watch the centre-back situation really carefully, actually, because obviously, we've already recorded our tier list where we put players into, whether they were long term. The jury is out, and if you haven't checked out that video, go and give it a look. And I was in no doubt, was I, about Zuma? I said no, he's long term. He's got to be in there. That being said, as good as Zuma is, I think Jack made this point really well when Jack turned around and he said, okay, you think Zuma's playing well at the moment. Don't think that old Zuma has gone. When we switch our tactics and we play a high line, he's got to start running back the other way. You may well find that that he's not looking so clever, basically. I paraphrased him there. What he's saying is, when we sit deep, it suits Zuma's style of play. And I would be very, very interested to know that actually if there are games when we play a back two, and actually the preferred partnership if we're playing a higher line is a Gerd and Kara, who would probably be the two main guys for that job. Is he going to do it, or is it just going to be actually Zuma and it's one of the others? We don't know. I don't know. All right, and you're right. We have to wait and see on that. But I just think there's a couple of instances this season. We've seen it with Bowen. I think we've seen it with Fabianski. I think we've seen it with Souček. With Rice, I sort of get it, and also I don't think Rice's levels drop over a period of time. He might have a quiet game for him here or there, but I don't think you see, a couple of months worth of poor play, which I think, we'd certainly seen with Souček. And I'm sort of watching it a little bit with Soufal as well. I think it's really important with the situation with Ashby there as well, that Soufal doesn't think he's guaranteed that first team spot there. And I don't think that's a great example of it. I'm just saying it because I do know he has started Ben Johnson ahead of Soufal there.
Yeah, but I think Moyes is okay as long as he trusts the alternative. And I think this is why Bowen hasn't been dropped yet, because I don't think Moyes has that in Cornet yet. That has to come. It's like Downs. Would Downs have started last week in the Premier League? Absolutely not. It's disregard Souček's form. Let's hypothetically, Souček's not in great form at the minute. Would Downs start? He might do this weekend. Last weekend he wouldn't, because he didn't have that European game behind him. Now he's got it. Moyes' trust in the player increases slightly, increases a bit more.
Sure.
And once it's up there, I think Moyes will say, with Moyes, I don't think it's a question of does he deserve to start Souček or Bowen, because I think Moyes himself would think probably not. He's not in great form at the minute. The problem for Moyes is, do I trust the guy on the bench to go in and do a better job than what I'm getting from Bowen and Souček? And I think that's the problem. I think the answer is not really. So far this season, does David Moyes trust Maxwell Cornet to do what Bowen does off the ball and better on the ball? No. He might do better on the ball, but off the ball, I don't think Moyes trusts him yet. And we've seen enough examples in a very short data pool that actually Cornet won't do what Jared Bowen does off the ball. So for that reason, I think it's not so much Jared Bowen is undroppable, it's that the alternative isn't good enough yet. Cornet needs to get to that level where Moyes says, actually, he will do what Bowen does. It's now off the ball, they're both put in the same performance, they'll both do this, that, and the other. It's now a case of who is in form, in possession, that I will play. And Cornet's not there. And we've actually seen already Michail Antonio be dropped this season, where Scamacca played well against Viborg. The Premier League game came round. Yeah. Scamacca started. Now, Antonio is somebody I would label up as undroppable all day long in the last couple of seasons. But now, very, very early in the season, Moyes has said he's in form, he's playing, because I guess the trust level is different for a striker than it is for a right winger, because you don't have that defensive element there. You're not asking Scamacca to track the left back, are you? You're asking Scamacca to get involved in the build-up and stick the ball in the back of the net to really simplify it. And if he's doing that, then I think Moyes is okay with it. And I think there's only one player in this squad that I would say is undroppable. I say Bowen probably is at the minute.
Yep.
But I'd like to think in a couple of months' time, once Cornet is up to scratch, he won't be. Rice will always be undroppable. I'd be shocked if we ever see a game. I mean, Rice probably just won't go out of form that badly anyway. But even if he did, I'm not sure we'll ever see a moment where Moyes hooks him and puts Downs next to Souček. Now, is that right? Of course it's not. But I do have an element of understanding as to why Moyes would still go ahead with it. But apart from Declan Rice, I don't think anyone is undroppable in this West Ham team. And so there shouldn't be either. And that is a huge credit to the squad that we've assembled. But that's why I don't think we can judge David Moyes in the past couple of seasons. Yes, there's players that should have been taken out, but I can fully understand why. It frustrates the hell out of me, don't get me wrong. But I can understand why he won't. And I think Pablo Fornals is actually a really good example that Moyes will drop players, because everything Moyes wants in a player is in Pablo Fornals. But we've seen him in the team, out the team, in the team, out the team, usually swapping with Lanzini or Ben Rama or whatever. One's on the bench, the other two start. So I think there's enough examples to suggest actually that Moyes will drop anyone as long as he's got a suitable alternative. And I think that's the problem, rather than Moyes playing somebody too much.
Yeah, I'd actually, I think Fornals is a good example of something else as well. However, before I mentioned that, what I think is I am going on previous evidence, and I need to see more evidence. At the moment, I don't I'm not aligned with you on that. I actually think there's more than one player. I think there's 4 or 5 that are undroppable. However, in terms of Fornals, I'll tell you what he is. There's a little beacon of hope, if you like, for people that are maybe looking in and thinking, oh, Zuma's undroppable, Fabianski's undroppable, Souček's undroppable, Bowen's undroppable. Fornals was on the outside looking in. But once he won Moyes' trust, he got it. Right. And that was it. Once he proved to Moyes that he could be trusted. Also, just on there, it just reminded me of something. When Moyes came in after Pellegrini, that's the second occasion, he was excited about Felipe Anderson. He really was. I remember him talking about him. I think Moyes just thought, this is a guy that I want. Look at him. He's very direct. It wasn't a bag of tricks, Anderson. He would try and do the nutmeg or just run round someone and sort of head straight for it. And I think Moyes thought, this is my kind of winger. So I think he was set up for him to be that. But very, very quickly, he changed his mind, didn't he? So I think he does have the capacity to change his mind in both directions, like we've seen with Anderson in one way, and then like you see with Fornals in the other way. So look, I think he does have it there, but it's just something I just want to make sure. I want to make sure everyone gets a fair chance. Got nothing to do with me, is it? But just something that sometimes I look at the starting lineups. Okay, so just something I'd like to see done a little bit differently.
Just quickly, then you said 4 or 5 players are undroppable. Name them. Who do you consider to be undroppable?
Fabianski, Zouma, Rice, Souček, Bowen.
Okay. I would argue the Fabianski one. I don't think he's played badly in enough games consecutively to be dropped. And Areola gets plenty of time in European football. I get where you're coming from, but I don't think. I think as fans, we want Areola to play rather than Fabianski be dropped. I think it's 2 different things a little bit, and we can be quite reactive as a fan base where. Like, I know our next Premier League game in the preview, I know we will say, Areola, please. Fabianski was awful at Stamford Bridge. Yeah, one poor game, and we're like, out. So
not end of last season. I'm sorry. Out of the last 8 games, end of last season, I think he made pretty bad mistakes in 5 of them, and that's where I take my evidence from. And I'll tell you what, it will if what you say is true, and he makes, not only did he make the mistake at Stamford Bridge, I thought he was culpable for making the whole defence nervous in his mistakes just before it, which didn't result in a goal. That will only cement. It's a goal confirmation bias, isn't it? Of course, but that will only further cement my opinion if Fabianski starts the next league game, whatever that may be. That'll only further cement that.
I'm putting Zouma in the same category as Bowen for me, untested. I don't think we've barely got 2 fit centre backs. Even last season, there was barely 2 fit centre backs. I think you've almost got to wait until you've got like the situation, which is Kerr and Aguero both fit, both firing, and Zouma. Even at the minute with Dawson back to 100% fitness and he starts playing well. Now what you can do with Kurt Zouma because the partnership might have to be Kerr and Dawson. So what are you going to do? So I think it's a wait and see with that. Souček, I've given my reasons, and Bowen, I've given my reasons as well. But to be fair,
to be fair, I do think Zuma's in good form. I don't want to lump Zouma in with. I think Zuma's last 2 games have been excellent. I wouldn't drop him, and I think Bowen's about to come back into form. But I do think the start of the season, Ben Rama's had more of a case for inclusion than Bowen, and it's Ben Rama that's been dropped.
Anyway, while we might sit here and debate who might be undroppable and who is undroppable, what we do know is time will tell. But if you've enjoyed this discussion, please do drop a like on it. Subscribe to Hammer's Chat. Myself and Gonzo. Catch you in a bit.